So we're going to talk about noses. I think this is the first day on noses. I took a little time to do a little philosophy of art last week. So I'm going to give you some breakdowns on it. And let's go here. All right. Let me grab my pencils. Okay. We're good. I'm going to have my phone on just in case I'm making a goof. Somebody can warn me. So with the nose, each feature now has its own particular set of problems. It's got its own unique structure. We looked at the eye and the eyeball, eye socket, all that kind of stuff with some detail. Now we're looking at the nose. We'll just work our way down and then we'll go back to the ear last. They each have their own particular structure, and then they are a lesser structure connected on the greater landscape of the face. So understanding how that works, let me get this, move it so it's not quite so glary. There we go. Understanding how that works can be of value. So let me just lay this in here. And do a little bit of nose drawing. Just to give us something to work with. I won't do a particularly careful job. I just want to get it laid down here so we've got something to talk about. Now, one of the things we'll find is there's going to be a certain kind of connection going on here. And we can use those construction lines or those separate shapes to suss that out, figure that out. And we can make it ever more refined in construction and contour, in tonal mapping, and so on. But she has a particularly low ear. I'm going to make it a little higher than it is. And if I pick up a little bit of that hairline, just to get it started here. And then we can look for all these things. So if we're a little underneath the head, then we're going to notice that when we're underneath something, the detail at or near the center gets higher, and the detail at or near the sides tends to get lower. And you can see then the more central eyebrow arch or eyebrow line is raising up quite high, and the contour on the left side there is dropping down quite low. We'll just do that as a little crude connection there. We're going to want to figure out how this stuff works, but if that's going this way, then so would the tip of the nose go that way. If we could see them, so would both corners of the mouth. We can't, they're wrapping around. So how we place these things, notice as I laid this out, not beautifully placed. We're going to have to do a better job of that. But there's a lot of things to worry about. So we'll work at it one step at a time. And so when I'm trying to figure out how to, I'll worry about 1 to 3 things and give that my attention. So I'm going to worry about making sure the stuff in the center is higher. Stuff on the outside is lower, a little or a lot. I'll worry about using the simplified or rather precise or whatever hairline to get the proportion of the ear pretty good. And as I said, I made it a little higher than it is in the piece because I'm not crazy about low ears. I have some low ear issue. I wasn't very careful on where the eyebrow set compared to the forehead. It should have been foreshortened up. I wasn't very careful about how the nose set up where the mouth is. And so some things that I work on will mean I do a better job. In other areas, I'll do less of a job. And then I'll draw again and correct. So one of the things I want you to practice is being kind to yourself. You're learning on some level, just like I'm learning on some level. If I wasn't learning, I wouldn't screw it up. So give ourselves a break. We can do better. It's always a process. There's always more to do. And just judge it not by everything when you're sketching it out. If it was maybe a portrait commission, then yeah, you have to pay attention to all those things, and you'd slow way down and you'd use whatever process to make sure it's more accurate. But just worry about a couple things. I really wanted to get underneath this, and I did that here really well. I did that here pretty well. I did it here almost okay. But that was, for me, a win. And now I'll do it again. And maybe I'll add proportion to it. So now I'm going to be more careful, and again, it's a little shiny for me. Be more careful on where that brow sits. And maybe I'll lay in a double line to kind of show the whites of the eye, the thickness where the whites of the eye are, roughly. And maybe I'll draw super light. Maybe I'll start with the mask like it's clay and build over. Maybe I need to get more of the eye socket. Placed. So I'm going to look here to feel that position of the nose, and so on. Oftentimes I'll stack down and find working my way down to where the jaw is. That's better. And I'll do it again and realize, shoot, I'm underneath the nose. That means that nose should be shorter. Well, let's look at that for a second. So let's talk now. So that's my process. I'm not going to try and get everything right. It's overwhelming. It'll drive you crazy. I'll pick one or two things that are my metrics for success, and I will forgive myself on all the other things. So now as we start looking at the nose, let's figure out how to do it a little better yet. So notice each time I draw, I judge it, and then I'll draw it again to make that a better judgment, better in proportion, better in connection. And what I like to do is each time find one or two things that I did right. And I did that each time. I found things that I did pretty well, and then I said, however, I could probably do these better. And so I'll do another drawing focusing on those things, or another drawing adding those things, if it doesn't feel overwhelming, to the metric of success. And then I just keep correcting until it feels good, adding on new measures of success. Now we're going to do proportion of being under the nose, not just the proportion of getting one, I guess this way, one eyebrow, how are we doing it in the camera? It's reversed, one eyebrow higher than the other eyebrow, and so on. So one of the things we have to realize is this has its own structure. It's a wedge. This is a ball and a hole. This is a barrel shape with pillow shapes on it, and so on. Because it's a wedge, it attaches up where the eyebrow line, where the transition between brow ends and then nose begins. It's going to be important. We're going to look at that again. So this is going to be the origin of the nose in my thinking. And then what we'll notice is on most noses, almost all noses, but not every nose, the nose is going to be going out at a different perspective, a different angle than the face. That's going to cause all sorts of problems if we're not careful, especially when we get into these difficult positions, because if the face is in flat perspective and the nose is in foreshortened perspective coming out at us, if I lift my head even a little bit, the nose gets very, very short. If I lift my head a little bit, the face doesn't get all that much shorter, just a tiny bit. So radically so. And as I go down this way, the nose gets longer, and now the face is getting shorter, and pretty soon that nose will overlap the mouth, overlap the chin, and make me drool. So we want to pay attention to that. The nose and the mouth push out together, just like a muzzle. So I'll come back to this little point that I was off camera explaining. So notice that the skull and the eyes, for a little cartoon dog here, they're back in line inside that mask of the face or ball of the skull. But the nose and the teeth, nose and the mouth, push way forward so they can use those teeth to bite and grind and chop and all that good stuff. We also have a muzzle. So what I'm looking for, I'm paying attention to this little wedge where the forehead ends, steps back, ends, steps back, and the nose begins. That's going to be the origin of the nose for us. So if I can find this central point, it's right in, double check, make sure that's on camera again. It's right here. Center line of the face, bisecting the features, separating left from right. And it's right here, although we don't have to be super accurate, right here. Forehead has ended, nose has begun. Looking for that point and the space between the eyebrows in there. And then that will be where the nose builds off. And notice that the face keeps going down and the nose is starting to push more out. And so that transition between forehead and nose, how far the nose pushes out, how far the nose pushes down, whether the tip of the nose is higher than the wings or lower than the wings, whether the nose is bulging out, bumping out, turning up, or straight Roman nose. So the curvature or the straightness of the bridge, the angle that it moves, and then whether the tip of the nose is a little or a lot higher or a little lot lower than the wings of the nose. And then the nostril will be in here. So there's a lot to think about, just like with the eye, a lot to think about. Take them one step at a time. Just try and get the mask of the face, or just try and get the skull going back and the face going down and the jaw going up. And then take a guess at where the forehead bumps out and back and the nose begins. And then that's a little bit of a problem, isn't it? So we want then to add a little bit of the muzzle. So let's do that. So we're stacking simple idea on simple idea. We're judging it one idea at a time. Just going to do a generic profile now. Here's the zigzag of an eye socket we saw when we were working on eyes. I want to see how the forehead pushes out and moves back. How it pushes out and moves back. How it pushes out and moves back. It can do all sorts of things. And then from that beginning, that space between the eye sockets, between the eyebrows, now I want to feel how it moves out. Again, zigzagging. Zigzagging. Stair steps. And we'll see those zigzagging ideas when forms are nicely lit, although it can be on the contour, or nicely overlapped, or, well, I said nicely lit with the shadows. The contours, the overlapping, then going back to the same side and going down, running back to the same time, going down, or the shadow shapes. When forms want to separate and show their own beautiful selves, we'll see zigzags. When they start to get lost in the other forms, we'll tend to see more curves and S-curves, like so. And then I want to make sure, I'm not going to worry too much about proportion yet. That's one more thing that's just too much to deal with. I just want to know the nose pushes out. I want to guess at about how long it is. I'll be happy if it's close. If it's really way off, I'll just do it again until I'm happy with it. And then I want to make sure that I'm doing the nose and the barrel of the mouth. And then oftentimes the chin pushes out again. So notice where the forehead ends and the nose begins, and where the barrel of the mouth, not the lips, but the barrel of the mouth ends and the chin begins. If we draw a line through those points, then you can see the nose and the barrel of the mouth with the lips push forward, and then the wing of the nose might come back quite far and set in there. So that's going to be the process, is this stair-stepping back and forth. We practice stair-stepping from forehead to eye socket to cheekbone, and even to sometimes the chewing muscle, the masseter muscle. Zig, zag, back and forth in some manner or form. We're getting the same thing here and down here, but the main thing is to give us a little bit of a muzzle. Not as much as a puppy dog, but a little bit. And so you can see the muzzle here. over here, here. See at 3/4, you can see that nose starting between the gap of the eyebrows. I don't know why I'm bending it towards the computer. That space, that's in here. Then the nose goes off in its own direction. The face is going down this way. Nose is going off this way. Unless it's perfectly in alignment, it's going to be coming towards us. And notice that if we came down, the barrel of the mouth with the lips on them, but even before the lips, pushes forward. And if we look at a skull, I got a skull here. The nose will build out here. Look at where the forehead ends and the nose begins. Come out here. The pillowy lips would be on that. But look at how far the barrel of the mouth without the lips pushes forward. And we go back quite far before the chin bumps forward. And this character has a smaller, lesser receding chin and quite a furrowed brow there, but it's the same idea. Here it is here. It's Donatello piece. Space between the eyebrows. Begins the nose. Nose goes in its own direction. And the nose and the mouth build out together a little bit. And then we come way back to the chin. The base of the barrel, the mouth, and the chin. So we're going to want a little bit of that muzzle, not on every single character, but most of them, the vast majority. If you have dentures and you take them out, you don't have any teeth, that can reverse this way. The jaw keeps growing over your lifetime. That jaw can grow forward this way. Or if the teeth are just ground down, as we find in some early hominids that we dig up as fossils, then that's going to slam that jaw shut more. Again, then that'll change it. But generally, we want to push those forward. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay. We'll move a couple books around here. Make sure that's in there. Good. Now, when the head is straight on at us, we're not going to see that foreshortening as obviously as we will in a silhouette when we're in a profile. So we can do the same idea. We can get the eyebrow line, the eye line, or the eye sockets. And we're looking for the space between the brow, where the forehead tucks back in towards the eye socket before the nose pushes out towards us. Looking for that little space in there. You know, with wire-rimmed glasses, oftentimes you have a little wire framing picking up that little shape. And that little shape can take on all sorts of different character depending on brow to bridge of the nose. And then what we're looking for is once we do hit the nose, is we want to feel the bridge of the nose, which is that front. Just cut it off here. I want to feel the bridge of the nose, the ball of the nose, the wings of the nose, and the overall wedge of the nose. And here it's very subtle, as Fetchin tends to be, but the wedge of the nose includes the bridge front plane and the beveled out side planes that then rest on the greater landscape of the cheeks. And we want to feel the cheeks are connected. And then the interruption of the nose steps over the top of it. Otherwise, we might get a cheek, a nose, and a cheek, and this cheek will be out of whack with that cheek. So feel that connection all the way across. And we have all those parts, and then we might well need to look at the septum even, and we'll look at that another time. We're not seeing it here, and we don't want to worry about it now. So we have several parts, a little wedge to begin the nose, the bridge of the nose, the wedge of the nose here, this little keystone, we'll call it, like the keystone of a bridge, and then the wings of the nose, and underneath we have the nostrils that are up under those wings, which act as bridges and help to create the nostrils for that nasal cavity. Let me do one other one you can see here. Now look at the difference between that keystone area here and here. Quite different. Very broad. Big. And then a pretty little bridge comparison. We're a little underneath that. And then we're seeing just a sliver of this side because it's more of a 3/4. We're seeing more of this side. We'll worry about that for another time. But we've got just the proportion of those parts. They're all connecting, beginning about the same spot where the forehead ends and the nose begins, a little transition between. That transition can take on all sorts of different shapes, really pinched, really broad, really compressed, like a bulldog. And then the front plane, which is that bridge, the beveled side planes, which open out, widen out to make that transition from mountain ridge down to the plains of the cheekbones that's all fitting on. And then we have those in pieces that we'll save for another time to go into. But notice just the character of how far apart the eyebrows are, how quick and varied the transition. Is before that bridge starts, or how can radically change. Angle, journey down, more like a water slide, more like a bumpy cliff kind of thing. Very different. So it'd be a good idea to practice those things. Practice the basic positioning and the setup of finding the eyebrows. And in this case, I'm thinking of the eyebrows as, just roughly speaking, good enough as the front plane and then the eyebrow, the hair of the eyebrows become the transition into the beveling back into those eye sockets. So a little bit of the down plane. And that's why these will oftentimes drop into shadow here. I'll just put generic eyes and not her eyes. We're stepping back in before we come back out for the eyelids and stuff. So we want to set that up. It's going to get that right. It's going to tell us a lot about the front plane of the forehead and how it becomes the bottom plane of the forehead, how it ends the forehead and begins the nose, how the nose tracks out wider and broader to reintegrate into the landscape of the cheeks, and so on. So a lot of the success that you do, no matter what style, no matter how subtle and nuanced or how painterly or how strong the values of light and shadow are, is getting the big structure of the head to put those smaller structures of the features on. Okay, so let's stop there.